Ryan, thank you so much for being with us this evening. So as London just pointed out, Republicans and Democrats are split on everything from January 6th to the military action taken in Venezuela and a plan going forward there after the military strike. I just want to start with this basic question. Does what happened in Venezuela with the military ouster of Maduro make the United States safer?
Well, we can definitely say that the president of a country that was, pretty hostile to the United States is no longer in charge. Whether or not that makes the United States safer depends on what Delcy Rodríguez decides to do in the near future. She's put out statements that are both defiant of the United States and conciliatory towards the United States, and there's likely some backroom negotiations going on with the Trump administration. So I'd really say it's the outcome of those negotiations that are going to affect how this affects U.S. national security in the region and elsewhere.
Speaking of those statements, Delcy Rodríguez, as you just mentioned, Venezuela's newly sworn-in leader, suggested early on that Israel had a role in the military action. I want to ask, why would she make that claim? And then secondly, is she a credible partner for the Trump White House to work with?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure why she made that statement. There's no evidence that that's the case. Regimes like this often turn towards anti-Semitism as a way to justify their own rule, and that's what I suspect is going on here. Is she a credible partner? I would say that's very much in doubt, but it's certainly possible that this shock to the Venezuelan regime might prompt a change in behavior that could change how they act in their governance and in their foreign relations.
Well, maybe as a follow-up to that, I know Congress and experts have documented Hezbollah's involvement in Latin America, and that, of course, is the Lebanese terrorist group, in terms of money laundering, training camps, and smuggling operations. Can you talk about Hezbollah's connection to Latin America and in Venezuela in particular, and why does that connection even exist?
Yeah, so Hezbollah actually has a surprisingly large presence in Latin America. And that's because the group actually funds a lot of their operations through drug smuggling, and because a lot of that activity happens in Central and South America, they've grown connections there. This is also helped by their patron Iran, who had a relationship with Venezuela as well. So kind of you get the state sponsor helping its proxy grow its network in America's backyard. This is something that the United States has been tracking and trying to push back against for quite some time, and hopefully this strike will, reduce the ability of Hezbollah to operate in the region.
If you were advising the Trump administration on their plans going forward, what advice would you give them as far as democratic reforms to stabilize Venezuela?
Yeah, so having new elections would be a big step forward, but it's going to be a challenge to make these elections free and fair. One of the kind of charges the Trump administration has leveled against Maduro is that while Maduro claims to have won the election, it was rigged and marred by violence. So getting the regime to commit to new elections is going to be, or new elections that are free and fair is going to be quite difficult. But I would put that towards the top of the list of their asks.
What about
as well as?
I'm sorry, continue. I didn't realize you were still going. Please.
Another thing that might be good for them to do is to try to sever the relationship between Venezuela and Cuba. Cuba is a large patron of Venezuela. A lot of the casualties from the raid were actually Cuban security forces protecting Maduro, which shows you how much Cuba cares about it. And Venezuela sends a lot of oil to Cuba. So trying to push back on that relationship would also be near the top of the list.
I know there are questions about opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. How comfortable would you be with her playing a role in a new Venezuelan government?
So I think it would be great for her to play a role, if very challenging, in order to get her to actually be able to do so. The existing regime is quite opposed to her involvement, and it's difficult to see how they would let her take a position in the government of significance.
Well, if the existing regime is still in place, I know there were reports of Maduro's son actually having charges against him as well. How are these reforms supposed to take place? How do we make sure that the United States actually has credible partners working in the country of Venezuela?
Well, that's actually the challenge that the Trump administration is facing right now. They pulled off this great tactical success in nabbing Maduro, but it's going to be difficult to translate that into, concrete strategic effects on the regime's behavior. So going back to those negotiations I was talking about, maintaining leverage over the regime while not trying to get the United States bogged down in an extended conflict here is what they should be aiming to do.
Final question for you. How do you think rival countries like China, Russia, and Iran are viewing all of this, and how might a revitalized democratic Venezuela upset their aims in the Western Hemisphere?
So their reaction has been negative, but relatively muted. I think one important thing to understand about this is that Venezuela cared a lot more about its relationship with China, Russia, and Iran than China, Russia, and Iran cared about it. So they've condemned the action, but are unlikely to, take any significant military action as a result of it. I'm sure they'll, condemn it and use it as an example of alleged U.S. Hypocrisy, but they don't need that justification in order to take the malign actions that they were already going to take.
All right, we'll leave it right there. Ryan Brobst with Foundation for Defense of Democracies, thank you so much for your time and your insights tonight.